Welcome back, everybody. My name is Lindsay. This is Linda's Investing, and I bring you today another good friend of mine, Mr. Mark, the financial firefighter. He's another person from our community, one rental at a time. I had the pleasure of meeting him last year. Oh no, actually this year, the biggest event. I feel like it was last year already. I don't know. Anyways, I will let him introduce himself. How are you, Mark?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, this has been a while. We've been trying to schedule it, so glad we got to connect. But yeah, I met you at the Vegas event earlier in February. We're in the one rental at a time community, school community. You run the out-of-state investing call on Fridays with Vincent. And, as you mentioned, I'm in Hawaii, but I invest in Pittsburgh. So I do the out-of-state investing thing also. So yeah, this should be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Okay, Mark. So I know a lot about you because you also have a YouTube channel, and I also tune into your lives, and you're very, very active. And most people that I met in One Rental at a Time had been through you first, usually. You have a lot of guests on your channel. You had me at one point, but go check out Financial Firefighter if you haven't already. But I want to talk about a little bit about how what you did before real estate. Like how were you handling your finances and your money before you started in real estate?
Oh, so yeah, for me, I was definitely kind of, I guess you would say, brainwashed or down that traditional path of, going to college, getting that W-2 with good benefits and putting money in retirement accounts. And I got into fire department, so I had a pension kind of in place once I had a certain amount of years. You buy maybe a primary residence and kind of just sit on it, try to pay it down. After 30 years, especially in Hawaii, you'll be a millionaire. So it's kind of that was the blueprint for me, just work 30, 40 years possibly. And then at the end, you're supposed to be set. And life changed, 2020, the world kind of changed and it opened a lot of people's eyes, and some good, some bad. And definitely it just made me realize how risky I was being, kind of relying on this pension and kind of maybe one stream of income in a sense. So it pushed me into, looking at things a lot differently and kind of planning and kind of looking at kind of passive income and generating multiple streams of income. And that's why started investing about 6,000 miles away out of state, because Hawaii is a very expensive market to get started in.
Yeah, and then I think that's a blueprint for a lot of people, right? A lot of people that work a W-2, they're thinking their retirement accounts or their pension plans, or whatever. Some people don't have access to pension plans anymore, so they rely heavily in retirement accounts. I think you had just a live about that yesterday, but yeah, you do like something as worse than nothing, I guess. Like when you do are thinking about retirement accounts, but then when you take in consideration inflation, like what happened during COVID, where everything shoot up, all the prices just went double and overnight, you're thinking like, well, okay, maybe I'll have, if I put away every single month for 30 years, I have $1 million after that. But what would $1 million cost in 30 years from now? Like, what is that going to be value at? What is going to be the new $1 million in 30 years? That's what you're thinking about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the pension is great, and the retirement plans are, like you said, better than nothing. But I think, even like today, right, like the volatility in the markets now, whether you like Trump or not, or whether you believe in tariffs or whatnot, but you see so much uncertainty out there, and the market going up and down, and depending on where you're at, whether you're close to retirement or just starting your journey, people are being affected a lot differently, right? So if you were close to retirement or in retirement and the market's, taking these big dips, you're panicking a lot more than someone who is able to generate different streams of income or has cash flow coming in. So, the retirement accounts are, like you said, they're better than nothing, but a lot of times you don't have a lot of control over it in a sense. And I think that's the trap that a lot of people fall into. Like just for myself too, it was kind of those, you set it up automatically, a certain percentage is taken out every paycheck, and you kind of just don't even realize where that money's going. Possibly you're not really staying on top of it, and you just figure, I just keep putting it in. riding the wave. And at the end, when I retire, I'm going to have this certain amount of money. But as you're seeing, a lot of people, today they're kind of panicking, like, oh, what if I was anticipating to have this much, the market takes a 20% dip. Now, how's that going to affect me? Am I going to have to work longer and whatnot? So it definitely opens. I hope a lot of people are starting to pay a little bit more attention to their finances, and that's what your channel's about. My channel's about, getting a part of the school community and whatnot, and just kind of thinking differently. And as you noticed, too, everyone's doing something a little different. Like you're doing out of state, I'm doing out of state. Some people are doing rent by the room, like Jared. Brandon's doing build to rent. So everyone has a different model, but everyone kind of has that same mindset of building their own retirement plan in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So initially, when you were changing your mindset, like trying to move avenues from like stream of income to multiple, what kind of resources did you leverage at that point? Like, how did you get into real estate is going to be the answer?
For me, I think, especially being in Hawaii, you just see real estate as this kind of asset class that continues to go up in price. You see a lot of, the median single family home price is, depending on what county, but, probably close to $1 million in a sense, right? So you see it as a great wealth builder, but a lot of people are looking at it as if I buy a home and I just wait 40, 30, 40 years and then I'll be wealthy, right? So the biggest change for me was kind of seeing that there's other markets out there in a sense. So my friend was investing in Pittsburgh before me, and he was always talking to me about it. Oh, you should look into this, and so it started to pique my interest, and that's kind of why I started looking in Pittsburgh. But there's a lot of great markets out there. Like you're in different markets, but as I think the biggest thing is having boots in the ground or some sort of connections that someone that you can kind of piggyback off of their systems. But what kind of blew me away was seeing homes for like $100,000, $150,000, and I never believed that there was, homes out there that were under $1 million, being in Hawaii, right? So that's kind of was the eye-opening moment for me to realize, like, well, a lot of these places, like the rent, is more than the mortgage and insurance payments and whatnot. And you can generate some income at the same time someone else is paying down your mortgage for you. So it's very eye-opening for me.
Mhm. And that was your friend from a firefighter?
No, so actually, he's actually good friend of one of my coworkers at the firehouse, but his son and my son are the same age, so
Mhm.
that's kind of how we started connecting. And he's a nurse actually at one of the hospitals, but same thing for him. He was big on retirement accounts before, but then he started seeing like a different path, and so he's kind of I mean, he still has his kind of stock portfolio, but for him, he's kind of transitioned more to strictly real estate in a sense too. But I think that's the biggest thing, and you'd probably agree that going out of state does have its challenges, and then that's why it's important to like kind of have this ties or boots on the ground, as you'd say, to kind of piggyback or bounce ideas off of.
Mhm. And I know that you've been an investor for a few years and you still haven't seen any of your properties.
Yeah, people probably look at that kind of, they might say that's risky, or a lot of people would prevent them from starting, maybe, being able to see their properties. And I think, that's the biggest thing for me. And I think I've maybe, I don't know if people recall, but so my son's mom, we're not together or anything, but she did start investing in Pittsburgh also. And there's just some people that you kind of have to realize, and I think they talk about, you just have to know your avatar. So you kind of have to know your personality. And for some people, investing remotely doesn't, they cannot handle not seeing their properties. And if you're that type of individual, then maybe investing in your backyard or someplace closer where you may not make greater returns. However, you're more comfortable. But for me, I think being in the firehouse, it's kind of a lot of times we figure things out. And I
Mhm.
think that's my personality. So that's why for investing remotely and not seeing my properties yet for me is not that big of a deal. And I think that's why having good connections in that market you're going to invest in, that's more important for me and people that I can rely on. But I think it's just a personality thing, and it's a lot of times for me too, even if I saw it in person, there's a lot of things that I'd be like, I wouldn't really know how I'd address it in a sense, right? If someone had more experience than me. So a lot of it is just you got to know your personality and know your strengths and weaknesses.
I agree with you. I've seen definitely a lot of investors. Out of state is not for everybody. A lot of people do have that personality of like, I need to be in control of every single thing. Like, I need to choose the colors of the wall. I need to choose the flooring that's gonna go on. I need to check everything else. But in reality, like I think about it like this. I do have a W-2. I do have a very demanding job, 50, 60 hours a week. And I don't have the time to make those decisions. And when I was looking at my market, I definitely needed somebody that was going to be there, somebody that was gonna answer all the problems that may arise and get those tenant calls and then handle connecting handymans, connecting what they needed to go into the house to fix or solve. So like that needed to take a our plate, and I was more than willing to account for that when I was running my numbers, like that 10% standard property management fee that you pay. It may be at some points in your journey, maybe a little bit more of the cash flow that you're making for your property. But if you think about it, you're no longer taking that on that job of managing that property. So you're having like an employee, you're making a business in other sense. Um, and you're obviously paying somebody for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Even for me, I look at you at what you're doing as very amazing, like trying to do more bigger rehabs from a distance. And I think that is another level to it also, you know. So for me right now, I don't think that's something that I really want to dabble in, but I think it's something that can be accomplished, but you have to have the right systems in place. And that's why, folks that are doing out of state investing and doing bigger rehabs, to me, that just kind of blows my mind. But it all comes down to systems, right? But I think it's just like you saying, you got to run your numbers properly, and then once you get that, then you feel a lot more comfortable than the projects that you do take on, right?
Yeah. The more time you spend on one market, the more comfortable you get with it. And I think that's what something Super talks about, Dion talks about, and just like, kind of hyper focus on one market, and then you'll be the master of it.
So that's what blows me away about Frank also. And I know for you, you and Frank have done interviews with each other also, and he's in multiple markets investing remotely. I think that that's another skill set, right? And you just have to be comfortable doing that. But because maybe he has more of a contractor background, you know, being in different markets might be a little bit easier for him to kind of feel comfortable with. But like you said, to me, that's the one thing that holds people up. They're always looking for that perfect market, or they're
Mhm.
always reading the next bigger pockets post or the next article on social media that says these are the top 5 markets to invest in, and then now you start, you know, jumping into that without even knowing anyone in those markets, where you might have another market, and like Gary, Indiana, or something where people don't really talk about much, but you have such a good support group there, which might make more sense, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, and it holds a lot of people back because they're looking for that market that's going to just blow them away with cash flow and appreciation and low property taxes and no insurance issues and all these things, right? And they're just waiting and waiting and trying to find that, instead of there's all these great markets out there with people that are making it work, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, and hopefully people will take away from this interview.
Yeah. Did you have analysis paralysis at all?
No, no, that's so I think that goes back to, like I said, kind of that maybe first responder mentality is, we kind of get enough information we need, and we kind of figure things out from there. And but at the same time, I feel that's maybe my story, or what I try to preach to people, and that's kind of what maybe has slowed me down. And I went fairly quickly, and I got, 14 properties or so in maybe 18 months time frame. And even though a lot of them were, you would say they're kind of rent ready, not like full rehabs or anything, even that. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize it takes time for properties to stabilize, or get your systems in place. And vacancies are killers, and wintertime can be harsh in different areas, right? So I think as much as I'm glad I did it and went just full steam, at the same time I think that has slowed me down in a sense.
Mhm.
But it's it's a learning curve for different things, right? Everyone has different things in their journey that they're learning from. And for me, that's my advice to a lot of people is, you're take your time. No matter how great the first few deals may seem like, there's always a learning curve. And that's where I think lumberjack landlord always talks about too, right? You can get these properties, but now you have to become a landlord and figure out how to manage these properties. And that's a whole different aspect of investing.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that our community it stresses that so much. Everybody gets the real estate back and they want to get the next deal and they're talking about the next house without even closing on the house they have under contract. Because it's exciting chasing that next thing. But everybody around us does make a big point of like get your houses stabilized first before jumping into the next deal, before buying multiple houses at the same time. Because, like you said, not having reserves or having vacancies may kill your cash flow or may make you lose money months at a time. And your market and my market are very similar in which our winters are very, very bad. And it's really hard, near impossible to get a good renter. Yes, you can get a renter, but a good renter in the house during those times. So every market comes with their challenges and their pros and cons, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't know how you started or how you felt, but for me, even like placing tenants initially, or rent amount, I think a lot of times, like when you run your numbers or you have your calculations, you're planning for a certain or expecting a certain rent number. So maybe a lot of times when you first get a property, you're kind of stuck to this number in a sense because you feel like I've done my research, I've done my homework, like this is what I'm supposed to command for this property. And you
Mhm.
kind of are a little stubborn, I think, instead of realizing that vacancies or having it empty is what's really gonna cost you in the long run. So instead of maybe lowering your rent or being a little bit, maybe closer to the average, or whatnot, right? Just, not having to stick to these numbers that you calculated. I think that's a big eye opener for me. And I realize now, like, it's okay to be wrong in a sense, right? Maybe I thought I was gonna get 1,500, but getting 1,350 is better if I get
Mhm.
someone that's solid and it's gonna be in there for a long time. So I think that's another thing I want to preach to people is you don't have to be stuck to these numbers and feel like, I think a lot of people maybe when they first start they feel like I don't want to be a failure, right? Like I've done all my homework and this is what I'm supposed to get, and you kind of stuck to it. And you don't want your friends knowing like, oh, see, you lowered your rent, because there's so much naysayers out there, right? So that's
Mhm.
that's something that I've learned, I think, after too.
Yeah. A magnificent thing that I think your market has, you have a lot of people investing in your market and our school community. And then you have a little group going on. We have the Pittsburgh family group growing and growing. And even people that were not invested in Pittsburgh now are coming to Pittsburgh. How do you feel about that?
It's fine. I'm glad that more people are willing to pivot. Some people, I think they're starting to realize that, and I think that's the great thing about the event, the meetups in person, is I think maybe some people do have some hesitations. They feel maybe other groups they've been around or whatnot, everyone is trying to get something. Everyone is maybe trying to sell something to them, or but like, I think the one rental at a time community, everyone is just trying to bring everyone up and help everyone, and no one's really trying to ask for anything. And so even like the Pittsburgh market, I don't tell people like, oh yeah, you should come and pivot and invest with us and whatnot. It's more, this is what we're doing. It's a great market. There's other great markets out there. If you can reach out to Lindsay, Vincent, or someone else who's in a different market, and just see what fits your style better, or who you connect with better. And even like for who we work with, so I over these years, I made a lot of different connections with different, agents and property managers and whatnot. So it's not like if someone was interested in investing there, I don't ever say like, okay, you only use this person. Usually I'll be like, hey, her connect with these three different agents and kind of see who fits your style better. They're all a little bit different, right? One is, I always call him like Yoda. He's this older agent. He's kind of like that grizzly veteran, but maybe he doesn't respond as quick to emails and
Yeah.
whatnot, right? But then I have like these other younger agents, little, and they're on their seventh house hack and whatnot. So maybe that connects with you a lot better. And there's multiple people, but I'm never like you have to use this one person or I feel bad if you switch or whatnot. So I think I think people realize that I'm not trying to get anything out of it in a sense. I'm looking at it as the bigger picture where if we just have more people investing there, it'll just help the
Raise
group a
the
little bit
government.
better. Yeah. Well, it'll just help the group better in a sense, right? So
Mhm.
like if, like there's other people from Hawaii investing or like Mikey in the school community and now Lars is pivoting, and even my friend that started before me. So like if we have a bigger overall portfolio, everyone, then we kind of have more leverage, even like with property managers or contractors, and be like, hey, we have this group that invests here, and and so yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It's just gonna help everyone in a sense.
Mhm. Mhm. I agree. When people ask me like, or do you want more people to invest in your market? I'm like, yeah, I do want more people to invest in the market. Buy next to me so we can all like have investor like little streets
Yeah.
so we can raise because majority of what my market has to be forced value on rehabs. So if you're like willing to put in some work into a house, then you would be able to cash flow really well and most likely take out your money from your initial investment. So if you're, making better, I guess, Gary, one street next, then it will be better for the city, better for the renters, and better for the investors for sure. Do do you mind sharing the numbers of a deal that you think is your biggest win?
Oh, see, that's the one thing too. I mean, I don't mind sharing. I'm an open book, but I think a lot of people would probably know me as not being as technical as a lot. So I think that's the one thing that helps me too. I don't get into analysis paralysis. But I would say that I think for me, the first three or four deals were all, I wouldn't say great because it's not like I did like burrs or anything to try to get money back out. But as far as deals that cash flow well have kind of been not a lot of headaches for me at all as far as maintenance or vacancies or whatnot. So the first three or four, but I always talk about how that kind of tricked me and to going so fast. And I
Mm,
think that those three or four first deals just made me think this whole real estate investing thing was so easy.
mm,
Like I got these properties, they all cash flowed day one, they all had great returns, probably 12 to 15% cash on cash returns off the bat, but at the same time, interest rates were much lower back then. But filled they weren't vacant very long. We basically got tenants in quickly. So for me, it was those three or four first deals that really made me think like, oh, all I gotta do is find these properties and buy them, and then put a tenant in, and I'm set. And then it was kind of the 10 properties after that, which I got so quickly, kind of all together. And so I did say 14 properties over maybe 18 months, but there was like a period where 10 of them were probably like in 3 to 4 months. So it was,
oh wow.
yeah. So, and I go back to the first three or four deals where it was kind of like, okay, I didn't, I took my time a little bit and I got them, they worked out well. But then that's why I was just like, oh, this is easy. I'm gonna sell my I'm gonna do a 1031 out of my condo I had in Hawaii, get these properties that cash flow. And of course, that's where, the kind of roadblocks came into play as far as, I got these properties in the winter time, and we touched on the winters a lot, kind of harsh in these areas. So, their vacancies were a lot longer. And, there's a lot of older homes in Pittsburgh. So, it's just always some sort of maintenance thing comes up initially. And it kind of just, I guess, like I said, there's just roadblocks. So that's kind of what slowed me down. And then, Zuber guys always talk about the first 5 years of suck. And I'm kind of coming up on that where things are starting to really just now kind of, you know, in that hope almost at the peak where it's gonna just now be kind of a hopefully a smooth sailing, everything's kind of just uh hands free in a sense and not, you get your maintenance request, but everything's kind of just moving forward now.
Mhm, mhm. So, what is the biggest lesson you learned of investing out of state?
My biggest lesson is I would say maybe do a better job of vetting your real estate agent that you're going to work with. And I would say that my first agent was good in a sense where we had all the deals made sense from a cash flow standpoint,
Mm.
but maybe the long-term vision wasn't there as much. So there's a lot of properties where maybe the parking is not what I would like to where it's gonna keep a tenant in longer. So even though it cash flows, you're gonna have maybe higher turnover rate because people might just get tired of the parking situation. And that's my fault, but at the same time, I wish my agent might have been a little bit more looking at it from a not just a cash on, like a return standpoint from the amount of cash flow, more from a vision of, okay, let's how much vacancy or issues might these little things that
Mhm.
maybe a more seasoned agent might have presented to me. So that's why the people that we kind of work with now, they like I said, I call him like Yoda. He's been for a long time, and he was on my channel before. But like even he said initially when he was investing, he was losing like $5,000 a month in the beginning, kind of thing, like all these bad deals, and it took him a while to really figure things out and know like it's like a long-term vision, right? So for me, it's just connecting with the right people and kind of just making sure you have the kind of the right vision in a sense, and don't just give yourself time. Real estate is a long game, and I think we all realize that now. And you're gonna fail, you're gonna make mistakes,
Right.
but the biggest thing is getting around people like yourself or joining the school community and hearing all these mistakes so that you know that people do recover from it, or people do, it's just part of the process in a sense, right? And it gets easier once you start doing it, but just get around the right people. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most important things that we have in our community is like we are gonna tell you where we went wrong. We're gonna tell you where we went too fast, too slow, we overpaid, we underpaid, or our contractor screwed us over. We're gonna let you know. Like those are things that are gonna happen. It's just like how are you gonna handle it afterwards? What's gonna matter? And the real estate can be very generous, but it can also be very humbling, and it will let you know, like that's why I'm saying, like when you hyper focus in a market, you will start to learn where are the areas, especially out of state. Like if you're not driving, you're not moving there, then you're gonna learn where the areas are path of progress and where the areas are like you're not gonna have any problems renting those houses. And you only learn that by spending time in a market,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And like you say, you're just as good as your boots in the ground. And if your boots in the ground don't have that vision that you want for yourself for your retirement, then you are at disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing about like you touching on earlier about other people investing in your market in the community or whatnot. So it makes them doing a lot of work too. So it keeps me informed on things or even on top of things because there's more people in that market. So it's kind of like you kind of building this team also. And it just kind of keeps me up to date on what's going on because there's so much information out there. And a lot of times you may not realize that maybe this county's taxes are going up, but there's someone in your group that invests there. And they're like, hey, did you see this? And I'm like, oh, cool. So it's good to have more people also that can
Mhm,
you can bounce ideas and kind of everyone is paying attention to the market. So now you just have more resources out there.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Turning gears a little bit, how did you find one rental at a time?
You know, I think, and it seems like a lot of people may have come across Dion's channel first. And I think he was on Bigger Pockets, and it was the Lazy Investor, and that's what caught my eye. And I think there's a lot of people maybe pivoting to that kind of approach or mindset where, you know, they have the W-2, or they want a portfolio that is minimal work in a sense at the end of the day. And I think that's kind of what really caught my attention first. I mean, initially, I think a lot of people, when you get started, you want, like, I want 100 doors. I want this huge portfolio. You know, all I got to do is have a property, put a tenant in, and now I collect, you know, rent every month. But as you start doing it, you start realizing, man, this is not as passive as it was told on social media. And I believe that Lazy Investor interview came out, and it caught my attention because I was like, oh, that's kind of what I want to do. You know, so that was, I think, what pushed me. And then I started watching a lot more YouTube content, and of course, you know, Zuber's channel popped up, and I think he might have had the pink, or not pink, but purple hair, or a lot of purple on his channel at the time, and it just caught my attention. And as you start watching it, you start realizing, like, you know, he talks about his mistakes, he talks about his struggles, you know, he's talking about how, you know, the economy, and you just start realizing that he's just putting out real information. He's not trying to, you know, really sell you on anything. He's not trying to give you all this fluff about how you're gonna be, you know, rich in 5 years. And he's, like you said, you know, all you need is four, possibly, if that's your goal. You know, you just, you know, you do it, the first 5 years are gonna suck, you know, things like that. So it's just a lot of real information. And as probably agree, he's built this great community. And yeah, everyone is just there to help. And you know, he's like an open book also. And you notice in school, you know, he answers questions, and he's an open book also, you know, and he tells you how it is. And yeah, I think that's, you know, Dion, you know, Zuber, Lumberjack, Millennial Mike, you know, Coach Carson's another great one. But yeah, I think they're all kind of bunched in together, and I came across them all at the right time to maybe keep me on this journey.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. I love one rent at a time. I don't have a lot of people around me that invest in real estate. People my age don't invest in real estate. They're trying to like, get those nicer cars, nicer houses, bigger and better. And I just not one of those people. So it's nice to have a community, even though if it's online,
Yeah.
to talk real estate now. I'm more involved now in the community, but I really enjoy bouncing ideas off other people and just, have some encouragement if I'm having a bad week or something.
Yeah. And then next time in Vegas, though, you got to hang out a little bit more.
I know. I know. We'll talk about it. What is retirement look like for you?
Um, what do you mean? Like timeline wise, or what am I, my
Like, what is
vision?
your idea of retirement, your vision of retirement, whenever that
So
happens?
I'm, you know, everyone probably thinks I'm weird, right? Because I'm in Hawaii, and my retirement is probably going to be not in Hawaii in a sense. I'll probably spend more time. So I always talk about it. I love like the North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee areas. So I'll probably spend a lot of time there. And I'm sure it gets old quickly, but I like that winter kind of colder months there. I know it's not extreme as, like, you know, Gary, Indiana, or Pittsburgh or whatnot, but it gets, you know, it's you know, in the, you know, 20s, maybe 30s. So I actually like that, but I can see how it gets old quickly. But retirement would probably be, you know, traveling, but spending a lot of time there. And I like it there too, because you can just drive to hit the road. You know, but a lot of it also depends on where my son's at. I have a feeling he'll probably go to school. If he does go to college, he'll be in that area because he loves it there too. So it'll probably be relocated. I mean, I'll probably spend time in Hawaii also. But yeah, it's gonna just be hopefully still doing the YouTube channel. And I think maybe I'll be looking at maybe different markets to invest in at that time. Um, Not that I don't like Pittsburgh, but if I'm in more like North Carolina, South Carolina, I'll probably start looking at probably doing stuff there to stay active and not be completely retired, but
Mhm.
maybe take on bigger projects just to see. But who knows? Like Dion, right? He did one kind of bigger rehab type thing, and he's just I'm done. I don't, too
Never
much time, too
again.
much effort, right? So things could change, but definitely I'm opposite. Most people want to retire in Hawaii. I'm probably gonna head out of Hawaii for the most part.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, thank you so much for being on my channel. This was so much fun.
Yeah, I thanks for having me on. Like I said, you're on some lives with us, and we'll get you on again. To me, the lives are a lot of fun, and you have a lot of great information. And that's like I said, you and Vincent run the out of state investing kind of Zoom accountability call on Fridays, and a lot of people tune in and they wanna. I think it just opens up a lot of people's eyes, right? A lot of people live in markets where maybe it doesn't make sense to invest, and they're trying to figure out how they can do it. And there's a lot of people in the community that are realizing that there's a lot of markets out there, and now that there's other resources, right? People that are doing it, that they have more options, and so tune into those calls and get more information.
Yeah, and if you don't know what we're talking about, this is inside a community of one rental at a time by Michael Super on school.com. So if you want to check this out, we have a lot of accountability calls during the week, and everybody's doing their own thing, but everything is involved in real estate.
Yep, real estate, social media, right? YouTube channel. So check out your YouTube channel, mine, help us grow. And I think these are the kind of things like we talked about community, right? I
Mhm.
think these are the kind of things that people have to get around and see that other people are doing it. And it's not that scary, right? You can I don't know how far do you have you ever looked how far Gary, Indiana is from you? I know Pittsburgh is 6,000 miles away from me
I
or
think I'm like almost 3,000 miles,
yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it can be done.
Yes, one at a time.
Yep.
Okay, I will have you back definitely for another video, but I will see you next time.
All right. Thanks for having me.